Three, two, one. We are live and ready to broadcast this Watercolor Mastery information session. I'm excited to have you here. My name is Angela Fair, and today we're going to not be doing painting. That was really bad grammar. And instead, we're going to be talking about watercolor. We're going to be talking about this strange beast that is the journey of learning watercolor. I'm going to be sharing, this is an information session really that's designed to give you information on my course Watercolor Mastery. This is a course for me that's kind of one of the most pivotal things that I teach, if not the most pivotal thing that I teach, is all contained in this course. And so it's important to me as we roll out and get ready for the next set of the next series of 6-week watercolor classes, that I make it very clear to you what Watercolor Mastery is about. I want to invite you to join the course if you feel you're ready for this course. If you're not, and if you're just here to get information, that's good too. I'm going to be talking about what I believe are the most important principles for mastering watercolor. And even if you don't take the course, you're going to get something out of that. So stick around. Okay, so just double checking to make sure that you can hear me. We had a really nice chat in the comments with everyone checking in from all over the world. We have students, first of all, Beryl said good morning. She was the first one on the chat this morning, and it's morning for her in Australia. The world has not come to an end because it's already Wednesday in Australia, and that's a very tired joke, I know. And we have people checking in from the UK and France, Sweden, South Africa, and then all over the United States. We like to chat about the weather in the chat because we get to experience all different kinds of climates and get a little peek into each other's world when we're chatting here on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube live, you can comment in the chat. Look for the little drop down usually to the right of the video screen. My assistant, Robin, she is amazing. She keeps me organized, and she is there to keep an eye on your comments and questions. If you're having technical difficulties, she can advise you. Usually it's something like reload your browser page. And she can answer a lot of questions about watercolor mastery, not just because she's helping me run the course this time, taking care of all the technical and administrative stuff, but because she's actually a watercolor mastery former student as well. She's one of our alumni. And if you're an alumni of Watercolor Mastery, an alumnus, why don't you say so in the chat? I'm sure that some of the students who are here wanting to know more about Watercolor Mastery would love to hear that other students have taken it and they're back here because you just can't get enough. And we're going to talk about how some of our former Watercolor Mastery students can be involved in this set of lessons for Watercolor Mastery as well. That's lined up here in my notes, and just a couple more things. If you don't have time to watch the whole video, I do encourage you to make the time if you're interested in knowing more about watercolor mastery. But I will be sharing my lesson notes from today's information session by email so that you can download those notes and have some of your questions answered in written form, as well as a recording of the broadcast so that you can watch it again if there are questions you had or parts you missed or you had to step away because your dog threw up on your shoes or those other little emergencies that happen during our day. So here we are to talk about watercolor mastery. It was very intimidating for me to start thinking about, well, first of all, to think about whether I could even teach a course called Watercolor Mastery. Was I a master artist? And what right did I have to claim that name? And then to actually think, can you teach mastery? Is that even something I'm qualified to teach? And so we're gonna really unpack what watercolor mastery is so that you have an understanding of what I mean when I use that term, because I think there's a number of things that it's not, that we tend to have some misconceptions about mastery and what it might look like or feel like. So right now I have a presentation I'm going to pop up onto the screen, and so just bear with me as I get it onto the right page. And then as my computer does a goofy little screen thing as I switch over to the correct thing. And I've set it there we go. I've set it so that my face is down in the corner of the screen, I think. And unfortunately, I'm not 100% sure I won't be covering my slides because I forgot to check for that when I was making them. So we'll make it work, and I'm going to read everything that's on them anyhow. I really wanted to design this this next hour as a lesson, not just me giving you some kind of sales pitch, because that's not what I'm about. My goal from the very beginning, when I did my very first YouTube video, was to share my light bulb moments in watercolor to hopefully help someone else, that maybe someone else who was struggling in watercolor might feel might get that little brainwave, have a breakthrough because I shared what I knew. And ever since then, it's been 7 years since I posted my first YouTube video. Ever since then, that's really been my passion, is just to inform and to recognize that we're all in this together. I'm a watercolor learner. I'm never going to have arrived, and that's just how it works. The nature of this living thing that we do. It's a discipline that doesn't have an ending. My course, Watercolor Mastery, just a little bit about it as we get started. It's a 6-week course. It's an online course. All the lesson content is on the internet, but it was really important to me that online courses generally have very low completion rates among their students. And when you buy an online product and then the instructor says, oh, you get access to this forever, or as long as it exists on the internet, which is how this course is made, then you feel like, oh, you have all this time, and then you never actually find the time to do it. And you're not going to master watercolor by owning a course, but you will grow more confident in your watercolor skills. You'll be stronger in your personal expression if you actually commit to going through those 6 weeks with us. Our course will be starting April 12th. Every week we have a new set of lessons that roll out that are based around a specific principle, and we'll be looking at that in the little bit later on. And we'll be wrapping up the formal part of the lessons about May 24th. The course is designed to be interactive. I could have created content that you could go through at your own pace anytime, but I found that with doing it this way, where we start all at the same time and we progress through the lessons together, we get much more of a classroom environment. And I've really seen how powerful that is as the students interact and build community with each other. Their friendships are made. Students are inspired by seeing another artist pursuing the lessons in a fearless way and without giving up. I do, so we have live sessions. I do a weekly wrap up where we look at some of the work that's done through the week. I might do an instructor critique of a student painting. We have, again, like I said, our student discussions in the community area of the site, and then the lessons, which are pre-recorded so you can watch them over and over again and in your own time. You don't have to get up at a certain time of day to watch the lesson. It's there, it's available for you. They open up on, I think usually we do Friday. The lessons will open up so you can watch them and start implementing them over the weekend, and then spend the week going through the course content. The wrap up, the weekly wrap up is a live session. We'll talk about that more yet. Don't worry about it right now. Okay, there are instructor critiques and coaching. With the nature of the course, I can't comment on every student work, but we work to really look to be engaged and to work together. And when I'm there in the student community commenting, I'm able to choose student work that we can all learn from. And there's a lot of great information that's shared as we interact with student projects. And the student community this time, this go around, Robin and I have been working very hard to make it even more interactive. And we're going to continue the student community access right until the end of June. And I'm really excited about being able to offer this extended period of time for students to continue interacting, working through the lessons, continuing to develop and build on what they've been taught through Watercolor Mastery. There will be more on that in a minute. I just want to read this comment from Hillary. She took Watercolor Mastery in the fall. She says, my thanks to you for designing and teaching the Watercolor Mastery class is heartfelt. Your passion in the watercolor art and your love for teaching inspired all of us, your students, to become more free and fearless. It's really a key word of mine. Your words excited and encouraged all of us in our attempt to find or develop our own style. You showed us how to have confidence in ourselves and be our favorite artists. And the amazing thing is that we all responded. I painted more paintings in the past 6 weeks during class than I had in the past 3 years when I first picked up watercolor painting. And what you taught us will stay with us for a long time. Thank you so much for this gift. I have had so many really touching testimonials, and I can't tell you how much they mean to me. That's something that I invested so much time, my heart and soul in working on this course, and to see the impact that it's having on students. It's really very profoundly humbling, actually. It's so humbling to realize that that we've been able to do this, to learn together and to grow as artists in this artistic community. As an artist, I'm just going to be really brief here. If you've been following me for any length of time, you know most of this. I'm a self-taught watercolor artist. I live in northern British Columbia. I took a watercolor workshop, like an 8-week course, when I was 17 years old. And most of what I've learned since then has been alone in my studio, sitting on the couch, in corners of the house when my kids were little, trying to muddle through by trial and error. I started learning watercolor at an age before the internet. And so I pored over watercolor books and felt completely overwhelmed by the skill of the artists on those pages, and doubted that I would ever have what it took to become an artist of any kind of skill level at all. In the last 6 years, I started teaching online. I launched my first course in fall of 2013, Loose and Fluid Watercolor, with the challenge of learning how to teach a loose and fluid watercolor style. And since then, I've built this watercolor community. I've been blessed to be able to teach thousands of students all over the world in my online classes and here on YouTube. And it's just really exciting to see that grow. Every time I build a watercolor course, I think, this is it. This is everything I know about watercolor. I'll never be able to make another course because everything I know is in here. And usually within a few months, I start getting ideas for what I want to do next. And it's the nature of watercolor, and I think the artistic discipline, just to grow and improve like that, so that the well never does run dry. And if you're feeling like the well's running dry, well, that's something we talk about during Watercolor Mastery. I want to talk first about what watercolor mastery is not. And this is important to me because I think we often have expectations that are unreasonable. Number one, flawless paintings. I used to think that when I painted a perfect painting, I would really know that I had arrived as an artist. And I have never, in 24 years of painting watercolor, I have never painted a perfect painting yet. I continually, things change. I make mistakes. I'm problem solving my way through the painting. And there's always some place where the painting changed direction. My expectations had to change, and maybe my focus. So I've learned that a watercolor master is not someone who paints a perfect painting. It's someone who knows how to, I wrote it down because it's not someone, I don't know if I wrote it down in these notes. I've been writing a lot about the course. When a watercolor master makes a mistake, they fail forward. I like that term. They take that mistake and they find a way to work with it in the framework of their painting, to help them learn, to make their painting stronger. Mistakes can make your painting stronger. It's amazing stuff. Watercolor mastery is also not replicating your mentor's style of art. I am not here to make watercolor, Angela Fair watercolor clones. I really want you to be independent decision makers who are painting to satisfy your own heart and your personal painting style. As unique as each one of us is, we can paint in our own unique way and find great satisfaction and fulfillment in that. It's a scary thing to teach because you know, it's so much easier just to paint step by step. This is how you make the painting. And yet to give someone the tools to say, you need to get closer to what's in your heart and get that out on the paper. That's a really exciting thing. It's just a little more, a little less linear. It's a lot more of a head game. And we work on that in Watercolor Mastery. And amazingly, connections are made and students begin to see their personal style start to emerge as they paint fearlessly. And that's, again, our keyword. We want to be fearless and free. Watercolor mastery is not reaching a level plateau of skill and style. Like I said earlier, there's always more to learn. You're always challenging yourself to paint more authentically, to build your skills. It seems like if you're fixing your eyes on a goalpost, I'll win an award, or I'll sell my first painting, that goalpost is always moving. There's always that next thing. Well, I'll feel like I'm an accomplished artist when I've done this next thing. So we want to learn to reframe our thinking to redefine success. Watercolor mastery is not knowing everything there is to know about watercolor. Yes, I teach here on the internet, but I don't know everything. And I love hearing from students who can advise on color choice and have tried colors that I don't know anything about, and new ways of using technique. And watercolor mastery is not certainty regarding your path as an artist. It's not that we don't have doubts and fears sometimes, but we've learned how to reframe them. We've learned a mastery mindset. Another comment from Michelle. Michelle says, my painting has improved every way as a result of taking this course. She was a member of our last fall series in October of 2018. She says, I really wanted to put all of myself into the course and keep up with the lessons and group discussions, and I had to paint practically every day for 6 weeks in order to do that. It is a lot of content. That is one reason why we've extended the community period to the end of June. Michelle says, in doing so, I developed the habit of painting daily, and because of that, I would say that this is the most worthwhile watercolor course I've ever taken. I love the discussion pages and weekly recaps. It really helped to feel supported and encouraged by Angela and the other members, and to give that back. I'm so proud of our watercolor mastery community and the way you have supported each other through every time we've run this course. We have this little family of artists that is so collaborative and supportive. It's just really an honor to be a part of. Okay, what is a watercolor master then? If it's not feeling that full assurance, if it's not confidence, and if it's not flawless painting, how can you know if you're a watercolor master? How can you develop a mastery mindset? During the course, we'll be talking about these in much greater depth. Watercolor masters understand art and design principles and make choices on how to apply them. It's not that, oh, every watercolor master needs to use this certain compositional framework or needs to know everything there is to know about color theory, but it is understanding that things like composition and design are going to form the bones of a strong painting. And so we spend some time exploring some of those critical elements that will make our paintings stronger in a foundational way. Knowing those art and design principles also means you can feel free to break the rules. We don't feel like we're a slave to these principles of art, but we get to work with them more confidently when we know what they are. A watercolor master seeks to build technical skill in watercolor by curating her education. You are here today because you're doing just that. You've heard about watercolor mastery. You want something more from your art. And so you're testing it out. You're auditioning me to see, is this a fit for me? Is this something that I feel like I'm ready for? You're making choices that will support where you want to go in watercolor. And it's important to do that. And I'm so glad that we have the internet now. We can look at different teachers. We can really build our own framework for education. And that's pretty cool. It just is, because back in my day, I took the very first watercolor course from the only artist in my community who was teaching at the time, and that was what was available. So it's really great that we now have a lot more control and ability to make those choices so that we can learn from someone who suits our learning style. A watercolor master rejects fear and paints with authenticity and emotion. Authenticity and emotion. Fear holds us back. Fear says people might not understand. Fear says, I don't know if I have what it takes. Then there's ego. Ego says, oh, if I make a mistake, everybody will think I'm not good enough to be an artist. I don't want to show that I have flaws. When you start teaching on YouTube, you realize you can't hide behind ego for very long, because I don't know everything. We make mistakes. And the really cool thing that happens when you reject fear and you look deep inside and you say, what do I want to say? What do I want to show in my work? When you learn to do that fearlessly, when you think to yourself, and this happens to me all the time, I look at a painting and I think, I don't know why, but I really like this painting, something that I've made. I'll think, well, really no one else is going to understand this painting, but I love it. It makes me happy. And when I share that work, because it's connected to my heart somehow, it's such an honor when other people recognize that authenticity. It's like we're little soulmates on that small level. And that's probably a silly way to describe it, but that's just how it is. A watercolor master has an understanding of the motivations that drive their art. We started painting because something inside of us said to paint, said, oh, I think I would really enjoy that, or did paint and felt that deep connection. One of my students last week said that her grandson told her, I like the way my brain feels when I paint. And we do. We like the way painting makes us feel. And often when we're choosing a subject to paint or choosing a color, if we get back to that like visceral thing that made us want to paint, and we think about, what's the visceral thing telling us about the to do now? What image is it choosing to paint? What subject and what style and what colors is it choosing? And when we can get really close to that gut thing that made us want to paint in the first place, it helps us to get closer to our personal style, even when we can't really explain it to other people. And it took me a long time to be able to describe what my paintings are all about. And that whole artist statement thing. So we have to really kind of reflect, get quiet and look inward, pay attention to the things that motivate you when you're painting, to be able to get close to those motivations and understand what they are, and then feed them. And a watercolor master has made peace with the ongoing learning process. I often use the term watercolor journey. It is not a destination. We are not trying to get to Watercolor Town. We're on Watercolor Road. And it's kind of like going up Everest. It's twisty and turny. It goes up and it goes down. And sometimes you can't see the summit. You just keep going. Unlike Everest, I think the journey can be a lot more enjoyable. I just finished reading a book about Everest mountain climbers, and it's just gruesome. We get to have this beautiful, colorful journey. It's introspective, it's kind of heart-led and soul-seeking, and colorful. I mentioned that already, but it's worth saying twice. We should enjoy the learning process as we're pursuing it, and we talk a lot about that in Watercolor Mastery. And a watercolor master knows that mistakes are tools for growth and not signs of failure. Your mistakes are not judging you, and they are not telling you you don't have what it takes, you shouldn't be an artist, what are you even doing here messing up this beautiful white piece of paper? Mistakes are opportunities to learn. When we make a mistake, we get to problem solve our way out. When we see a string of mistakes, we get to focus our learning to strengthen that area that we struggle in. And so if you're not making mistakes, I'll often say, you're probably in your comfort zone and afraid to step out. We have to push and challenge ourselves and be willing to make mistakes if we want to grow. And a watercolor master is motivated by the heart more than by outside influences or expectations. And this is a mastery mindset thing that we work very hard on during Watercolor Mastery. And a watercolor master is his or her own favorite artist. Isn't it a wonderfully long list of good things? By learning how to paint from your heart, you're painting to your happy place. You're painting to a deep inner thing that satisfies and fulfills you. You're painting to love everything you create. And as you learn how to do this, painting just becomes more and more fulfilling and more of an expression of who you are as an artist. This is my studio. I'm actually filming from here, and it's much messier right now, but it's a happy place. It's a colorful place, and I wish you could just all step inside of it with me. The next best thing is that we get to work in the studio together, in our own studios at home in Watercolor Mastery. Janet says, I didn't think I was ready for a mastery course. Often we don't. We underestimate our readiness for different things, or we get afraid. But Janet says, I'm so glad I joined. This is the most progress I have made in about 2 years. I was always painting with a tutorial or an online class, as I had no confidence or skill really to paint on my own. During this course, I started to put together the skills with my own heart and begin to paint alone. This forced me to confront my lack of confidence and to just paint. I am painting with more confidence and feeling like the outcome is my own. I am liking more of what I do and finally really believing that I will get better if I just keep painting. Thank you so much, Angela. Thank you, Janet, for that testimonial. Okay, we're going to take a quick look at the principles covered in Watercolor Mastery. We have time. I feel like I'm rushing and I need to just slow down and breathe. There's so much we cover in Watercolor Mastery, a lot of content. And it's there's this principle of growth that you're going to hear what you're ready to hear, and the stuff that you're just not ready for, your brain will filter out. It'll just shoot over your head. And so I do want to make sure that you are ready for Watercolor Mastery. If you are a relatively new painter and you are really working to just be able to anticipate how much water to use and how much paint to put on your brush, you're probably going to want to work on I don't want you to be overwhelmed by this course. You need some time to log those brush miles, to build your skills through repetition and experience. The more you use your brush, the better a feel you'll get for all of the little mechanics that make watercolor flow. So I want you to be aware of that. One thing we talk about in Watercolor Mastery week 1 is the perfect practice principle. Is what you are doing working? And we take the time to look at the way you've been teaching yourself, the practices you use in your studio, and are they are they reinforcing learning, or are they maybe fear-based and just doing the same thing over and over again, hoping for different results? So we talk about learning how to challenge yourself just a little bit, rather than just kind of retreating into that safety of repetition and doing the same things over and over again. We want to learn to create conditions for success and to revision and direct your art using breakthrough techniques to awaken your creativity. So we actually do some experimentation in week 1, and it's a pretty fun week. This is one of the paintings that we do in that I demonstrate in week 1. I don't encourage step by step. This is the lesson, and you should follow and paint the same thing as me. You're going to have much better results if you're painting from your own subject matter that you have a personal connection with. However, during the course, I do demonstrate in real time techniques that I use to develop paintings, so you can observe and then adapt them to your own painting style. In week 2, we talk about values, and I really feel like the first 3 weeks of the course are the weeks that people struggle with the most. I think because a lot of it is just getting into that mindset of being ready to learn. And then we do cover some pretty big topics. Thinking about value, the range of light and dark in your painting and the contrast between them is a huge topic that I feel like takes really years to start to understand, and even longer to really feel like a master of it. When you look at the most compelling paintings by the world-class artists, they show strong value contrasts, often simplified shapes, but it's those contrasts of values that really lead the eye into the painting. And we have to retrain our brain from thinking tree, house, blue thing, yellow thing, red thing, and start looking for patterns of light and dark. And we just bite off the first chunk of that iceberg in week 2 as we start to look at values and how they play a role in our paintings. We do that through value studies. This is a little piece of the value study that I did. I actually liked it so much that I carved it into a stamp, and I think I explored this little reference photo in about 5 or 6 different ways. And then I did do it as a watercolor painting as well after working through the values. And I demonstrate that whole process in Watercolor Mastery. Number 3, Watercolor Mastery. We spend some time on color theory, working with color to create stronger paintings and to understand the role of color in creating mood in your paintings. We don't just look at the painting and say, well, or the reference photo and say, well, we need a brown here and we need a purple over here and this is a yellow. But we Instead, we start to think intentionally about how colors influence each other in the painting, how to mix color to create mood, how to use a limited palette to create unity, and how to mix color more confidently, following a few simple principles. It's not complicated, which is really nice. I always try to find the simplest way to do anything, because I'm not very good at remembering a whole bunch of details and facts and steps when I'm in the middle of a painting. I'd much rather keep it simple. Color's too green, add a little bit of red, that kind of thing. And in this class, in this lesson, we actually do two very different paintings using the same colors. And by changing the way we mix them, we dramatically change the mood of our scene. And so that's a really fun lesson to be able to see that diversity. Week 4, one of my favorites, thinking about composition, choosing what to paint. How do we know if it's a strong reference photo? How do we develop our subject to be dynamic in a painting? Sometimes what works for a photograph doesn't work for a painting. And then what do we do if we want to abstract a scene? How do we use composition to help us paint stronger abstract paintings? And during this round of Watercolor Mastery, I'm actually going to be giving assignments each week based that you can choose basically from 2 assignments. There will be a representational track and an abstract track. So if you're into abstract painting, I'm going to give you steps you can take to apply the concepts in the lesson to your abstract paintings. If you're a representational painter, if you like to paint stuff, landscapes, florals, etc., I'll have instructions for you on how you can adapt the lesson for that style of painting, or you get to do both. I'm excited to be able to offer that during this round of Watercolor Mastery, and in future ones as well, as if all goes well. Number 5. Oh, and this is one of the demonstrations from week 4, as I take a subject I've painted before and we really dig deep and start to think about how to paint it more abstractly, how to paint it in a new way. And there's actually 2 versions there. We have a value study, we have a basic exploration of the original colors in the reference photo, and then this one shows a variation where I've amped up the color in my very favorite way. Principle 5, again, another one of my favorite weeks, time to start having some breakthroughs. We talk about developing your personal style and getting to the heart of who you are as an artist. Letting your style find you. You don't have to really go far to look for your style. It's there inside of you all along. You can learn the rules, the techniques of watercolor, and then you get to break them to be more like you. And this is just a really fun time of experimenting. We do some really playful stuff with some kind of experimental non-watercolor materials, learning to think outside the box, trying out some Yupo paper here. And then finally, on week 6, my goal is to leave students, as we wrap up the course, leave you feeling fired up and free. So we really look at how to take the principles presented in the course and develop a studio practice that will guide your continuing growth. I actually take you much more into my studio and give you a deeper look into my own studio process and how I develop a painting and work independently to give myself a voice through my art. And starting with the painting concept right through to completion. And I really work to paint something as many times as it takes until I can say, yes, that is what I wanted to say. Okay, about Watercolor Mastery, I know Robin's been taking your questions through the broadcast, and I will answer them in just a minute. Again, Watercolor Mastery is a 6-week online course. It is designed for not a raw beginner. You need to be at the place where not so much of your brain is taken up with watercolor techniques that you can't afford any thought to style, if that makes sense. I find that when my brain is working really, really hard to make the paint do what I want it to do, I just don't have space to also think about how I might interpret a scene in my own way. However, there comes a point in your watercolor journey where you start to feel a little bit, I'm actually going to pop my, I want to talk right to your face here, so I'm going to just pop back to my regular camera. There we go. There comes a point in your watercolor journey where you start to feel like you're missing something, like you have more to say than just what happens when you copy your reference photo or copy your instructor or that tutorial you're following or that inspiration image that you found on Instagram. When you start to feel that restless yearning, that's where watercolor mastery comes in. Bridging that gap between the tutorial style, step-by-step following along and learning technique, to really being able to express yourself. When I was trying to figure this out, I felt like I was muddling around in the dark. I didn't know if I was moving forward and getting better as an artist, finding myself, or if I was just kind of, I don't know, poking in the dark. I just didn't know if I was going to be able to find myself and find my voice as an artist, if the loose and fluid style that I was yearning for was within my reach and if I was moving in the right direction for that. And so I don't think it has to be that way. I think you should be able to have a community of artists who understand the journey. You should be able to have mentors and coaches who can share insight on what that journey might look like and how to get there, and help reinforce you when you have that little light bulb moment, to have someone beside you to say, that looks authentic, that looks like you. Try to do more of that, and to work with you and to help you understand that balance between skill and authenticity. So that's why I designed Watercolor Mastery. It's really important to me, but it's also really important to me that you don't sign up for the course if you're not ready, which is why I've been rambling about it for 35 minutes. I really want you to know what this is all about. Okay, so are you ready for Watercolor Mastery? There's another, like I said, you need to be ready. There's a ladder of competency. I talk about this. I talked about this in my watercolor splash course last week, but I'm going to mention it again. We start out as unconscious incompetence. We don't know what we don't know. And we start out painting in watercolor. We have some beginner's luck, some happy accidents. We love the process. And then usually when we get to stage 2, which is conscious incompetence, we start to realize we have a lot to learn and things aren't really going as smoothly as we thought, because we're now trying to do intentionally the things that happened accidentally when we were we just had no expectations. So as we work on building that skill and growing technique, many artists give up. It can take a long time. I always resolved that I was not going to be, I might not be the fastest learner of watercolor, but I was going to be the most stubborn, and that has paid off. It just took a while. As we work to build our knowledge, we gain conscious competence. And this is where the watercolor mastery students should find themselves. And it's hard to know for sure, and I understand that. You're not going to feel fully 100% competent in understanding watercolor technique, and that's okay. If that part of you is craving that more, craving that self-expression, and feeling like you have some space to concentrate on that when you're painting, that's where watercolor mastery is a really good place to be for you. If you're looking for a quick fix, something to get you through, make this huge leap ahead, I don't want you to leap into this course with too high of expectations either. You have to do the work. If you sign up for a 6-week course and don't follow through on the assignments, don't think about the mindset stuff that we talk about, you're going to struggle and you're going to feel blocked. And so we want to recognize that this journey, you're going to take in a lot of information, and then it has to filter down from your head into your heart, and that takes time. I don't think my brain is as porous that it's going to filter down really fast. I've got a lot of denseness up there that takes a little longer. And then if you like to paint and if you want to grow, but you haven't been painting in months, you're going to feel blocked when you even get started, because you're going to feel like you have to catch up somehow. So if you're actively painting and spending time painting, this course is going to be a better fit for you than if you're thinking, well, maybe this will get me back to painting. It's really hard to stay encouraged if you're trying to motivate yourself to spend time painting when that's not something you're in the habit of doing. Not saying that this hasn't worked that way for some people. I do have students who said, you know, by pushing myself and paying for Watercolor Mastery, I wanted to get the most for my money, and so I did commit to that time and I put those hours in. But it is hard because you're going from a standing start then to trying to keep momentum. So it works better if you're already kind of jogging a little bit. This course is for painters who are committed to watercolor. If you can commit 2 to 3 hours a week of painting, students who can commit at least 3 hours is what I've written down. Even if you think you can only commit 2, you know, give the time that you have. Really 15 minutes a day is a really good start over the 6 weeks of the course. So that's April 12th to the end of May. Students who won't give up, I want you in this course. Students who are willing to fail forward, to use your mistakes to propel yourself to greater strengths in your work. Like I said, weeks 2 and 3 are really challenging weeks, and students can feel overwhelmed by the scale of the content. Are you ready to bite into it and not give up? As I said, and I'm going to pop up the screen again just so that you have the info right in front of you. Watercolor Mastery, our enrollment starts here on March 6th. That's tomorrow, first thing in the morning. I'll send out an email letting you know that the enrollment gates are open. You can see more information using the link that you see there, learn.angelafair.com. Just take a look at Watercolor Mastery. I have actually pages and pages of testimonials. Scroll down the page till you see that link to testimonials if you want to hear from more students who've taken the course in the past. The course starts April 12th, and we're also doing a prep week on April 5th where we talk about getting your supplies together, and you'll get a supply list as soon as you enroll. So if there's stuff you want to order, everything listed in the course is optional. You should own some watercolor supplies, but you don't have to use everything I use to have success in the course. The enrollment does open tomorrow, March 6th. Watch for your first enrollment email. I have to limit space in Watercolor Mastery this round. I don't want it to be so large that we don't have a good classroom dynamic. So I've limited the space to 200 students. That still sounds like a big group, but it actually is a really nice size to have good momentum in the discussion. As you can see, the cost is listed below. I've priced it at $249 US, which equals out to $332 Canadian. I'm also offering a payment plan you can pay in 2 payments, and that will be available as well. Like I said, space is limited. Now, if you've taken Watercolor Mastery in the past, I do offer at free of charge, you can go through the course again, do your do-over. I'm going to be sending an email about that. I have to cap enrollment for that too, just again, so we keep our class size manageable. So I'll be sending out information about that so that you can know if doing your do-over is right for you. I like having past Watercolor Mastery students in the group because they're so supportive and they know what it's like to be starting the course for the first time. Okay, that's all my slides. As I said, we are going to, oh, there we go. Excuse me while I organize myself. I'm going to take your questions right now, and I'm going to also email out these show notes so that if you do have questions, they're all should have all the answers there in writing. Now, Robin's been taking down your questions, and if I'm really on the ball, I should even be able to find where she put them for me. Okay. People have been asking about the price. Again, it's $249 US. Registering. The email goes out tomorrow first thing. I'm going to roll out of bed on Wednesday morning and send that email for you. We'll open the gates and get you enrolled. Denise asks, I'm only interested in painting flowers and learning more about abstract. Would this be a good online class for me? This class, we really focus on the bones of a good painting. Color theory, value, composition, and then adapting all of that to suit your personal style and your subject matter interests. I think sometimes, and I've struggled with this, people get sidelined by the paintings that I do in my demonstration paintings that go along with the lesson. I wanted to include a full-length demonstration with each lesson. However, they are just to show you how I might use that in my own painting journey. It is for you to take and be a little bit willing to improvise, how to how the lesson is going to fit your style. And we really try to focus on principles I think part of this is because you want to please your teacher. So there's that part of you that thinks, well, I'm just going to do what the teacher did, and then she'll like it, and I'll feel good, and we'll all be feeling like we're learning something. But I really would much rather see you take the lesson and say, you know, what you said about using colors in this way really works well for this subject that I'd like to paint. And I love seeing students take the lesson and then improvise it in their own way. So again, it's not subject-based as much as principle-based. How long are the recap or demo videos each week? Each week we do a live recap at the end of the week. Because everybody's from different time zones, I know the time doesn't suit everybody. It's optional to attend that live recap. I usually try to keep them about 40 minutes to an hour. Life, Health, and Wellness asks, will you paint spring and summer themes? I have the demonstrations that I showed in the slideshow. There's a spring and a winter and a fall. I'm not sure that we did a summer subject so much, but again, focused on principles over subject matter. We do try, because we have it's actually really cool because we have students from all over the world who are taking the course using their own reference photos and interests and subject matter. We actually get to do so much learning in the community group as we discuss everybody's paintings. And so sometimes we'll have a student who will post a beautiful summer bouquet, and I have comments. I get to point out the compositional things that make that painting strong, or offer suggestions on how they could adjust the values to make the painting more dynamic. And as we share in this way, you get like a bonus lesson just out of those kind of discussions in the community group. I really like to emphasize how beneficial the community is, because I think most of the time when we take a watercolor course, we're in a workshop setting and you have, you know, people sharing the same table as you, looking over your shoulder, and sometimes that can feel a little bit, you can feel a little anxiety about that. In our online sessions, we don't have that. You get to paint in the privacy of your own home and share what you feel comfortable sharing. And I love the honest and vulnerable students who post their failures as well as their successes. And we learn so much from the students who are willing to do that. And there's this wonderful dynamic because we're really pretty honest and raw about what we're learning. And there's a lot of learning that happens there. Len asks, 200 students does sound like a lot. How interactive are you with us personally? I cannot promise that I will comment on every image that you post, but I am present in the student groups every single weekday. And you get, and actually in our last course, we had over 300 students enrolled. So it's actually a little bit of a smaller group. I found I've experimented with different size classes, and 200 actually sounds just about right for us. We had a smaller group in our summer session, and it was just a little bit harder to have that lively discussion. The course, I only roll this course out twice a year. We have our spring session, which is going on through April and May. Sign up starts tomorrow, and then we'll be running it again in October of 2019, and I don't have official dates for that yet. It really depends on our travel schedule, but I think mid-October right through to the end of November will be what we settle on. I only run this course twice a year. It takes a lot out of me because I'm always working to make it better, and I am really working to be present in the discussion. We're going to have some options for if you really want lay it all out kind of critique. You can post your painting and do that request for that no holds bar critique from your instructor. And I can choose from those paintings, from those requests, one to share in the recap. I'll do that once in a while. And we really, I don't even know what else to tell you. I'm running out of voice apparently. Oh, I have a good question here. How good do we have to be at drawing? I'm not very good at drawing. So that's a good question. Beverly, I'm not a great drawer myself. I started painting because I was much more comfortable holding a brush than a pencil. And what I learned is there are some principles that are more important than being able to draw a good outline of an object. So we really focus on learning how to draw with your brush and to observe shapes and foundational elements that make your painting stronger. That's a really big part of the teaching in this course. Gillies asks, how quickly does the course fill up? I don't know. I'm really not sure how long. Like, this is the first time we've capped enrollment. Last time we left it open for the entire week, and then even a little bit beyond. And it's just really hard on the internet to be able to judge how serious student interest is until we actually open the gates. I will try to keep you posted. What's going to happen over the next few days is if you're on my mailing list and if you received a link to this video, you are. I'm going to send out your recap, your show recording and your notes right after we close here. And then tomorrow, you'll get another email with a bit more information. And I will keep you posted if I feel like we're going to fill up. And I'm not going to, like, if we hit 200 and then 3 more people sign up like immediately after that, I'm not going to kick you out. You know, we can be a little bit squishy on that number, but I will give, you know, I'll say when we get to that, nearing that cap, I will send out a final email and just let everybody know that, you know, time's running out. I don't want anybody to feel completely burned. And if for some reason we have like a ridiculous number of people who want to sign up and we've reached our cap, we will find a way to squeeze in another session or something. Robin, are you okay with that? We'll find a way to do a summer session or something. We won't make you necessarily wait until fall. We'll figure it out. Linda asks, oh, here's a good question. I'm away for the entire first week in May. Can I catch up? We have this all the time. We have students who sign up who just, life gets in the way. People get sick, travel plans change, just life. And it's okay. What we really emphasize is a guilt-free learning environment. So if you feel like you're getting behind, you can start at lesson 1, even though everybody else is on lesson 3, and just work as you can find the time. You can dive into lesson, you know, to week 3, and do what you're comfortable with and what fits well for you. I really encourage students to learn to listen to that little inner voice. Sometimes the inner voice is saying, no, don't do that lesson. And it's saying that because it knows there's a breakthrough there. There's something that you were fearing that you need to plunge into and get past. And I'm always personally asking myself, what am I afraid of? And then I'm going after that thing. Last year, I realized that after all of these years of painting, I'm afraid of overworking my painting still. And so I would stop short of finishing a painting and say, oh, it's beautifully unfinished. I'm not going to finish it. And sometimes I couldn't tell if it really was beautifully unfinished, which that is a thing, or if I was just kind of afraid that I was going to make a mistake if I kept painting. So I had to actually deliberately overwork some paintings because I had to get past that fear. And so that's one thing we talk about in Watercolor Mastery, fighting that fear and just kicking it in the face. Just checking for questions. Oh, Beryl asks, will Angela email the enrollment form to us or do we have to go online ourselves? What will happen is tomorrow you will get a link. Actually, it's nowhere new. That learn.angelafair.com site, the masterclass page that gives you all the information about watercolor mastery, what's going to happen is that little waiting list form is going to go away tomorrow morning, and an enrollment box will show up instead with the prices for you. I have my course priced in Canadian and US. If you are outside of Canada or the US, what it will do is your credit card will do the, or PayPal, trying to think, if it uses PayPal or credit card, it's one or the other, and it will do the currency conversion for you. So you'll pay in US dollars, but then on your credit card statement, it'll give you the appropriate currency. Denise asks, is there a specific time for the weekly recaps? Usually, depending on my schedule, we do them Fridays at 2 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We're in a time zone that doesn't change when everybody else does, like Arizona. Yeah, we're just like Arizona, only colder. And so we try to do them Fridays at 2 p.m. And I think that's the majority of the questions that I have been taking. I want to thank you for sticking with me for the last hour or so. Oh, Robin's popped a currency converter up in the chat. So yeah, you can compare then to your currency for your country and just see if it's a fit for you. I just want to thank you for being here. That's where we were at. Yeah, this is something that Watercolor Master is something I love and I'm excited about. I hope I've communicated that to you. I hope I've given you a feeling for whether or not this is somewhere that you need to be for now. Do not worry if you're not ready yet. You will be. Be patient. I often say, trust the process. I had an email from a student the other day saying, Angela, I asked you a question a few months ago and you said something along the lines of trust the process. And I was hoping for something more concrete than that. But now I'm starting to get it. I understand what you mean when you say trust the process. And it's giving yourself to committing to do the right thing over and over again and trusting that the results will bear fruit, that you'll see the results. And that's really what we're doing as we go through this watercolor journey. It's just like you're driving and you just trust that your destination is going to be at the other end of the road, even when you can't see it from where you're at. And it's hard in watercolor. It's a journey of faith, and there are setbacks and plateaus and dips and mountains to climb. And I'm so honored to be an advocate for you, to be your coach and mentor. And I just appreciate you taking the time to be here today. I think there's a few more questions trickling in. I'm going to be sending out an FAQ document of frequently asked questions later this week. So I'm going to include the answers to those in that document since we are out of time here. Thank you again. And yeah, we'll check your email for that. The show notes, and I'll try to I could throw some question answers into that as well. So yeah, thanks for being here. Have a great day. Keep painting, and I will see you later on. Bye for now.